Mars Red is definitely a different type of experience for the anime medium. It visually looks different. The script forms in such a way that it doesn't play by where I think things would normally go in a series like this. I mean, Rufus not only overriding and pretty much making who I thought was going to be a major player all the way to the end game, is thrown in a cell with a gun saying, blow your brains out. And when I'm like, okay, Rufus is without a doubt the king of the vampires, in comes Defraud, who makes him just swim with the fishes, and there's no coming back. And the fact that the last episode isn't anything I ever thought possible, I thought it was clearly going to be either against Rufus or Nakajima, something like that. Nope, it's going to be Maida versus one of his old pals. Do I think Kursu will make it out of this series alive? Probably. Will Maida make it out alive? Probably not. That's where my line of thought is right now. But the past 2 weeks of Mars Red have definitely been an interesting experience. I watched last week's episode this morning, and obviously then I waited for episode 12 to drop. Last week's episode was good, but it didn't do anything as explosive as I originally thought it was going to. I think it was interesting to see the almost sacrifice that Miss Reporter almost made. At first, I was a little put off. I was like, okay, did she really need to get stabbed there? But then again, her connection with Defraud, it kind of made sense. And to just see the overall escalation of things kind of just hitting the fan, it was a sight to behold. You sprinkle in some backstory last week with, a noble sacrifice because poor boy was about to fall to his death. And it became something that felt solid for Mars Red's quality. But personally for me, watching this week's episode, that's what I was kind of assuming last week was going to do. So I am glad that I decided to watch them pretty much back to back, because the endgame to Mars Red is interesting. It almost feels like it started as quickly as it ended, right? Because you feel like, okay, there's this invincible army of vampires. There's no way that we can stop them. Oh shit, crazy lunatic Maida pretty much did as such. And, well, how would you stop Rufus, right? I mean, Rufus pretty much feels like he has the world in the palm of his hands. He wants anarchy. He wants chaos. He essentially wants to watch World War whatever at his doorstep. That's what he's building up to. Characters who I thought were just kind of like a little socially awkward turns out to be working with Rufus. And I'm like, oh man, what is Hsieh gonna do? Oh, you're making this really cute romance plotline that I didn't expect. There's actually a surprising amount of romance in this show, and while they're definitely, you start off with a marriage that can never be, I never expected it to go this emotionally engaging with who might love who and who's going to be the reason another character continues on. So to just see how quickly they ended the Invincible Vampire unit in comparison to how quickly it started, on one hand I'm trying to think, okay, that's actually really interesting, completely unexpected endgame. On the flip side, I'm like, wasn't this really supposed to be something that was next to impossible to destroy? But then again, given all the unexpected twists and turns, it does line up into a pretty exciting endgame, and honestly it'll be interesting to see what the sword fight's going to look like next week, because given where we're currently at, I mean, there is the uncertainty of just like where all the individual vampires and civilians are going to go. I feel like half of next week's episode will probably be just a bunch of clashing of swords trying to snap Maida out of it, and hopefully he'll be able to come to before probably having to be put down. I feel like it's going to be a situation very similar to that of the beginning of the show. I feel like there's going to be this parallel with his fiancée and how she went out, and I feel like a similar situation's going to occur with Maida himself, but I guess time will tell, right? Mars Red is criminally underrated. It's criminally underappreciated. On one hand, I do understand because it is a very slow burn experience. It pretty much is like going to the theater and watching actors on a stage. But I really do think it's artistically very engaging, it's very interesting, and everyone that I personally recommended it to have come back saying, oh yeah, this is actually a really compelling show. May not have wanted to watch it weekly, but in a binge, it's pretty solid. Though I have seen that the dub for this is actually a big reason a lot of people have been checking it out, because it's very easy to access dub same day as the subs. So people may want to, rant and rave saying, oh, dubs aren't all that great. Personally, for me, Mars Red dub isn't everything that's my cup of tea, things like that. But the Mars Red dub is doing it much more of a service than this just being a standalone sub-series. Because I've seen quite a few opinions say that because of the type of presentation, because of the type of, almost theatrical performances being given, it's a lot easier to consume with the native tongue than having to also read subtitles alongside it. And I can completely understand why people might think that. So I'm glad that there is easier ways for people to jump on board a show that's pretty much, destined to never be seen in the light of day unless a very good cult following will promote it for many years to come. I truly feel like 10 years from now, this is going to be a show that's going to blow up. People will say, oh my god, did anyone ever hear about this Mars Red? Absolutely insane. There's this very interesting theatrical story, and honestly, vampires are done right. There was all these love stories that could never be, and, hopefully I'll still be around being like, hey, I told you guys, Mars Red was goddamn amazing all those years back. The one thing I do hope, though, for next week's episode is hopefully to see a satisfying conclusion for the world itself, because it feels like the world's kind of thrown in disarray, and while the Invincible Vampire Unit being stopped so easily, I'm not really all that torn about. I think that's perfectly fine. But there's still a lot to do with the actual society, so hopefully they pace it well with the sword fight between Maida as well as Kursu, as well as just the actual endgame. I mean, I am glad to see that Rufus was just pulling this man's leg, and, Nakajima, the man who wanted a bloodless war, wasn't so stupid to just completely switch his morals. It seems like he really was played, and I wouldn't be surprised if he puts a bullet in his brain, but maybe they'll go the direction of him surviving and trying to make amends. Hard to say, right? But overall, I mean, last week's episode I would put, lower in terms of my favorite Mars Red episodes, but this week's episode I put more higher, so watching them back to back, it just kind of creates a really great experience for the Mars Red anime. Truthfully, I think I have a good idea of where next week's going to go and how they're going to leave us off, but I mean, given the fact that this episode went in such a crazy direction, I probably have absolutely no idea, but I guess we'll see. And I know this isn't the most highly praised or, well-received series out there, but I do appreciate the number of people who have been sticking by the reviews and actually requesting them. I did mention last week how I'd most likely wait until there's 2 episodes to do another review, and since next week's episode is the final one, of course I'll review that as a standalone review. But there has been a decent, almost feels like I have a cult following on the Mars Red reviews, similar to how Mars Red has a cult following of people actually watching it and appreciating it. I mean, it's very easy for me to watch a show like this, enjoy it in my own time, and move on with my day, but I always like to give exposure to shows that maybe aren't going to see the light of day in a season where everyone's talking about the big shows of the season. So I really do appreciate it, I have to say. I mean, I probably don't say it enough, but, without people at least commenting, engaging with the videos, requesting more reviews, the reviews probably would have stopped after the first few, because it's very easy for me to say, I don't make money off this series, really. I mean, I make a couple of bucks here or there, but I mean, my main income comes from other videos. So the fact that people are, legit requesting these videos, it makes me want to continue reviewing it, and makes me want to continue finding those oddball series to continue to review each and every season. Sometimes there isn't that much of an oddball show to review every season, but I always try to make a good variety, and seemingly people are continuing to enjoy it, and I really appreciate it. I just want to say that. Let me know, though, your thoughts on either last week or this week's episode of Mars Red. And what do you hope to see with the last episode next week? If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.